A black woman was quietly denied service at a high-end restaurant, despite empty tables and practiced smiles. The waiter, following a system he never questioned, dismissed her with a coded excuse that stung louder than words. But Maya Brooks had something far stronger than outrage. She had a plan, a partner, and a name on the lease. And just wait until you hear how she came back, not for revenge, but to rebuild the very place that once locked her out. The rain hadn't stopped all afternoon, soft at first, then steady, the kind that blurred windows and made streetlights look like distant stars. Maya Brooks stepped out of her rideshare with her jacket pulled over her hair, careful not to slip on the slick bricks of downtown Charleston. She had passed Huxley's 100 times before, on the way to work, on the way to church, on Sunday bus rides with her grandmother, who used to sigh at the building and say, "They don't let us in there, baby, but I sure did mop those floors." Tonight wasn't special. No celebration, no occasion, just a Thursday evening and a craving for something slow-cooked and familiar. Maya had worked a full day of design meetings, then sat through her culinary night class discussing reductions and roux. All she wanted was a meal where she didn't have to stir or strain anything. Inside, Huxley's was quiet, almost hushed. Low lighting glowed across the glassware. A jazz playlist drifted from hidden speakers, giving the room a kind of curated calm. Maya walked in with her umbrella tucked close, her heels damp, her curls pulled back. She spotted the perfect seat, a booth near the window, just under a painting of magnolia trees. Her grandmother had loved that painting. She eased into the booth and set her phone on the table, half checking the menu, half watching the streets she once traveled by bus. A few seconds later, a waiter approached, mid-30s, pressed uniform, name tag, Travis. His stride slowed when he saw her, his eyes darting briefly behind her shoulder to the couple seated nearby. An older white pair dressed in quiet elegance, the kind that didn't shout wealth, but suggested it with pearl earrings and a silk scarf folded just right. Travis hesitated, then his expression settled into something she couldn't quite name, not rude, not exactly cold, but performatively neutral, like someone flipping to the script before speaking. "I'm sorry," he said, voice light, barely carrying over the clink of silverware from the next table. "We're actually full at the moment." Maya blinked. Her eyes scanned the room. Half the tables were empty. A table of two was being wiped down by a busboy. A foretop near the corner hadn't been touched since lunch. She looked back at Travis. "Are you taking reservations only tonight?" His mouth pulled into something close to a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, it's just, we have a few private commitments in the kitchen. Chef's limiting service. I can't seat anyone else right now." Behind her, the couple had just been handed menus, heavy ones with embossed gold lettering. The woman was already pointing at a wine list. Maya glanced down at her own place setting. No menu, no water, not even a glance from the hostess when she walked in. Travis shifted on his feet. His hands fidgeted with the server's notepad. "Sorry," he said again, quieter this time. It hit her then, not like a punch, but like a slow, deliberate pressure, something familiar. The words were polite, the tone was even, but the message had been delivered loud and clear. "Not tonight. Not for you." Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head, that soft, weary wisdom, born from knowing when a door wasn't going to open, no matter how many times you knocked. Sometimes the table ain't set for you, even if you pulled out the chair yourself. Maya stood slowly, collecting her bag. Her hand trembled just slightly as she reached for her umbrella. Travis had already turned, retreating like the conversation was over, like it had never really started. The room didn't look at her. That was the trick. They didn't need to. The absence of attention was its own spotlight. She walked past the hostess stand, past the open bar where two young men in button-downs toasted something in low voices. No one stopped her. No one apologized. She stepped back into the rain, her reflection catching briefly in the glass. Damp curls, upright posture, eyes that said, "Don't cry here." The street outside had become a mirror, reflecting a version of herself she thought she'd left behind. A woman reminded, gently but unmistakably, that the rules change depending on who walks through the door. And as she walked down the street, umbrella shielding her from the storm above, the real storm was already beginning, the kind that brews not in the clouds, but in the quiet fire of a woman who refuses to forget. Maya walked 3 blocks before she realized she was still gripping the umbrella like a weapon. Her knuckles were white, her jaw tight. The rain had soaked through the edges of her coat, but she hardly noticed. Every step echoed with the sound of that waiter's voice, soft, practiced, and hollow. Private commitments. It wasn't the words, it was the choreography. The way he glanced over her shoulder, the quick scan of the room, the flatness of his tone, all signs she'd seen before, in other places, in other forms. The polite refusal that wasn't about food or policy or timing. It was about perception, about deciding in an instant who belongs and who doesn't. She ducked into a bookstore cafe and ordered tea just to have a reason to sit. She opened her phone. No unread emails, no voicemails. But her fingers didn't go to work notifications. They went to the group chat labeled "The Table We Build." It had started as a brunch planning thread years ago, but it had become something else over time. A thread of women, mostly black, mostly professionals, who had each, in their own way, learned how to navigate rooms built to keep them out. Without hesitation, Maya typed. Just got turned away at Huxley's. Empty tables. Waiter said kitchens closed for private commitments. Couple behind me got menus. Almost immediately, replies chimed in. What? Again? Send a pic of the receipt. They did that to my cousin last year. Said her outfit was too casual, but let a guy in a hoodie sit 2 tables over. Name the waiter. She hesitated, then typed it. Travis, mid-30s, short beard. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't have to. One of the women dropped a screenshot, a Yelp review from 2 months ago. Same place, similar story. Another added a link to a local thread discussing selective seating in some high-end restaurants in the city. Screenshots of other stories began to fill the chat. Same pattern, different day. It wasn't just about Travis. Maya felt that in her bones. Her anger at him was real, the kind of anger that hums quietly under the skin. But what cut deeper was the realization that he wasn't the beginning or the end of the problem. He was just one cog in a machine built to protect certain faces and quietly filter out others. Across town, Travis Cole was stacking dessert plates in the dish bin, his shirt damp with sweat from a double shift that still had 2 hours to go. He didn't feel heroic. He didn't feel proud. He just felt tired. The moment with Maya came back to him in pieces. Her eyes, the way she paused like she couldn't believe what she was hearing, the slow burn of silence that settled between them. He didn't want to think about it. He wanted to believe he'd done what he was told, because if he had made a choice, then it meant he was accountable. A month ago, his manager had pulled him aside in the hallway near the staff lockers. "Watch the table mix," she'd said, casually, like someone reminding a barista to restock lids. "What do you mean?" "You know, people notice when the energy shifts." "What energy?" She raised an eyebrow. "Just make sure everyone feels comfortable." It hadn't sounded cruel. It had sounded corporate, framed in the language of customer service and atmosphere. But everyone understood what it meant. Travis didn't consider himself that kind of person. He grew up in a diverse neighborhood, had friends from every background. But he also had rent to pay. His tips swung wildly based on how seamless a table's experience was. He couldn't afford bad reviews. He couldn't afford to get written up. So, when he saw Maya walk in alone, no reservation, no jewelry, no air of apology, he made a decision he told himself wasn't his to make. He told himself it was just policy, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. And across the city, the threads of Maya's story were already weaving through inboxes and conversations. Screenshots were forwarded, names were dropped. A city council aide who owed Maya a favor, she'd designed campaign flyers for his run last year, replied with, "Let's talk. There's been chatter about this place before. If you're willing, we could bring it to the licensing board." Another friend, a local pastor, sent her a voice memo. His tone was soft but firm. "You shouldn't have to prove you deserve a seat at the table, but if they won't give you one, we'll build a better one." Maya listened to it twice, not because she needed comfort, she was past that, but because it reminded her that what happened tonight wasn't just personal, it was structural. The hatred that began to take shape in her that night wasn't the burning kind that scorches everything. It was colder, clearer, not directed solely at one man in a white apron, but at the entire quiet, invisible system that taught people like him how to smile while turning people like her away. It was the hatred born not of shock, but of recognition. The bitter realization this wasn't new. It was just next. And hatred like that doesn't fade. It builds. Maya didn't scream. She didn't post a viral video or stand outside the restaurant with a sign. Instead, she opened her laptop. Anger, she learned, could be noise, but it could also be architecture, and she was going to build something with it. At night, after work, after culinary classes, after checking in on her dad's blood pressure or proofing a friend's resume, she sat down with a glass of water and her notes. A week had passed since the night at Huxley's, but the memory hadn't softened. It had crystallized. The same way sugar turns into glass when you heat it slow and right. That's what her fury had become, clear, sharp, and steady. She started where all good plans begin, with research. Not headlines, not hashtags, but records. Property filings, health inspection reports, employee turnover logs. She didn't need revenge. She needed leverage. What she found wasn't scandalous. It was quietly telling. Huxley's, despite its polished dining room and curated wine list, wasn't as solid as it appeared. The owner, Richard Huxley, had fallen behind on lease payments twice in the past year, according to city filings. The restaurant had passed its last 2 inspections, barely, and a former dishwasher had once written an anonymous post on a labor board forum flagging unpaid overtime. More interesting, though, were the reviews. A traveling food vlogger with over 300,000 followers had visited 6 weeks ago and described the food as uninspired and overpriced. The head chef had left twice mid-service in the same month, citing creative differences, and never returned. Maya took notes. She created folders. She built timelines. Her desktop became a web of documents and deadlines, connections and clues. She didn't just want to expose the problem, she wanted to replace it. But she needed help. That's when she reached out to Elena Park, a former creative director Maya had freelanced for back when she was juggling design gigs between jobs. Elena had once tasted Maya's homemade peach cobbler during a late-night brainstorming session and told her, with a half smile, "One day your palate is going to pay your rent." They hadn't spoken in over a year, but Maya sent a message. Honest, concise. She didn't beg, she pitched. Charleston has a storybook restaurant that looks good from the street and rots behind the door. I want to buy it. I want to rebuild it. But first, I need someone who believes in a kitchen that doesn't turn people away. Are you still investing in dreams? Elena replied the next morning. Only the ones with receipts and recipes. Let's talk. 2 weeks later, Magnolia Table LLC was born. Maya, majority owner. Elena, seed investor and silent partner. Maya used her network carefully. She reached out to the city council aide who had once promised her, half-jokingly, "If you ever run for mayor, I owe you a favor." She didn't ask for a favor. She asked for a conversation. one with the landlord who owned the Huxley's property. The man, a semi-retired developer with a mild smile and mild suits, met her in a coffee shop near the Battery. She wore a soft blue blazer and brought pie in a small paper box. She didn't talk about injustice, she talked about opportunity. She told him about her culinary training, her investor, her vision, a space that celebrated the flavors of the South without the hierarchy that poisoned them. The landlord, to her surprise, didn't need much convincing. Huxley's had been late 3 times. The space had potential. What he wanted wasn't just money, it was reliability. And Maya radiated it. Afterward, sitting in her car, Maya let herself breathe for the first time in weeks. This wasn't noise, this was movement. The plan, once fragile, now had weight. Every time self-doubt tried to creep in, and it did, in whispers that sounded like old teachers and old bosses and old fear, she reminded herself of that night. The way the waiter's voice dropped when he said, "private commitments." The way the hostess never looked up. The way her presence had been treated like a disruption, not a guest. She didn't want to shame Huxley's, she wanted to own it. Not just the building, but the narrative. She dug into her grandmother's recipe notebook, pages smudged with flour and oil, tucked in the back of a drawer Maya hadn't opened in years. Okra stew with fresh thyme, buttermilk biscuits with sea salt and cracked pepper, cornbread with a twist, citrus zest and honey glaze. She started plugging ingredients into spreadsheets. Costs, supplier contacts, seasonal availability. She built sample menus and profit margins. Late at night, with one browser tab open to restaurant software demos and another to a YouTube video on kitchen layout strategy, Maya was becoming something new. Not just a chef, but a founder. Anger had started this, but purpose was finishing it. The blueprint was ready. All it needed now was a signature. It was the kind of morning Charleston seemed to offer as an apology for the summer. Sky swept clean, air crisp, leaves shifting toward amber. But inside Huxley's, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Travis Cole clocked in just before 11. His badge beeped. The espresso machine whirred. A tray clattered in the back. Everything was as it had been, on the surface. But beneath that, something was off. The hostess barely made eye contact. The bartender was polishing glasses that didn't need polishing. And the kitchen staff had been whispering in small, hushed huddles since breakfast. An all-staff meeting had been called for noon. No context, no agenda, just a message from the front office. Mandatory attendance. Do not be late. Rumors swirled like steam from a simmering pot. Investor pullout? Rebrand? Did Huxley sell the place? Maybe we're getting bought by a chain. Or closing. Travis didn't say much. He busied himself wiping menus, but his thoughts kept flickering to a night 2 months earlier. A booth by the window. A woman with a quiet stare and the kind of dignity that made silence louder than words. He hadn't seen her since, but the memory had lingered, not like a ghost, but like a stone you carry in your pocket, shaping your walk without you even realizing it. At exactly noon, the front doors were locked. The manager stood stiffly near the podium. And then the doors to the dining room swung open, and Maya Brooks stepped inside. She didn't need to say anything right away. Her presence filled the room before her voice did. She wore a navy blazer, pressed slacks, and a calm, composed expression. Not angry, not smug, just present, fully, unmistakably present. She wasn't here as a customer this time. She was here as something else entirely. Behind her trailed Richard Huxley himself, looking older than he had 2 months ago. A little grayer, a little smaller. He adjusted his cuffs as if it might slow time, then cleared his throat. "I want to thank you all for being here," he began, his voice softer than usual. "As of today, effective immediately, Huxley's restaurant will transition under new ownership. The business and operations have been formally acquired by Magnolia Table LLC. He paused, took a breath, and looked at Maya. "This is Maya Brooks," he said. "She is the new principal owner." A stillness rippled through the room, half disbelief, half realization. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then a few glances. One server exhaled sharply. A line cook muttered something under his breath. And Travis? Travis went pale. He felt every detail rush back like a flood. Her face, the silence, the excuse he'd offered, the lie he told, the truth he hadn't stood up for. He had told himself it was policy, but now, standing in front of her, he understood what it really was: cowardice wrapped in protocol. Huxley went on, explaining the lease transfer, the financial terms, lightly, and his own retirement from day-to-day operations. His voice, for once, had no edge of command in it, only resignation, and maybe something close to humility. When he looked at Maya before stepping aside, there was something else there too: respect. After the formalities, Maya stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I won't keep you long," she began. "I know you're all wondering what comes next." Her eyes swept the room, not with scrutiny, but with the attention of someone taking full measure of a space she now owned, not just legally, but emotionally. A space that had once closed its doors to her. "What happened to me here wasn't just about me, and it wasn't about one person. It was about a pattern, one I don't intend to carry forward." She turned slightly, as if inviting the building itself to listen. "We're not doing business as usual anymore. We're not judging who sits where. We're not curating atmosphere at the expense of equity. If that feels threatening, this may not be the place for you. If that feels like a breath of fresh air, you're in the right room." Later, when most of the staff had trickled out, some shaken, some relieved, Maya walked back into the dining room. Travis was still there, standing by the window booth, the same one he'd denied her months before. She approached him slowly, not for drama, just directly. He turned when he saw her, his shoulders tense. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like he expected punishment, public reprimand, retaliation. But Maya didn't offer any of that. "I'm not here to humiliate you," she said. "I'm not interested in revenge. But I do believe in accountability." Travis nodded slowly. I didn't know what to say that night." "You didn't have to say much," she replied. "You already made the decision." He swallowed hard. "I was following," but he stopped, because the words tasted wrong now. They sounded weak, even to his own ears. Maya held his gaze, steady and calm. "I know the system taught you how to speak to me that night. It trained you to prioritize comfort over fairness, but you still had a choice. And I'm not here to burn anyone's livelihood, but I will burn the script." She handed him a folder. In it, a new service charter, mandatory anti-bias training with an external facilitator, transparent pay structure, and a posted seating policy. First come, first served, no exceptions, no coded language, no ambiguity. "If you can stand by that," she said plainly, "there's a job here, a future, one built on something better than the old rules. But if you can't, there's a severance package, no judgment." Travis nodded again, slower this time. He didn't speak, but his face shifted, something heavy lifting, just slightly. What he felt wasn't fear or shame alone. It was the unfamiliar heat of responsibility. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of change. Maya stepped back, looked around the room once more. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like reclaiming, like stepping into a house someone once locked her out of, and choosing to open all the windows. The magnolia table sign caught the last gold of sunset, its serif letters painted with care, edged in warm light. Beneath it, people gathered, Not because it was trendy or exclusive, but because something new had opened on an old foundation, and word had gotten out that it was different this time. Inside, the air smelled like caramelized onions, lemon peel, thyme, and roasted garlic, but also something else: welcome, in the most literal sense. The music wasn't loud. A jazz trio played near the bar, smooth brass notes drifting like candle smoke. The floors had been refinished. The menus were printed on soft cardstock. The paint was fresh, but the walls held stories, some painful, some reclaimed. It was opening night, but nothing about it felt rehearsed. There was a pulse in the room, not of nerves, but of presence. People showing up not just for the food, but for the story, for the change, for what this space now represented. At one corner table sat a city council member. At another, a retired high school coach with his daughter. There were neighbors who had known Maya's grandmother by name, Miss Thelma, the one with the best greens on the block. There were foodies with cameras and notepads, but they kept their voices low, sensing this wasn't just another lunch. The first reservation of the evening, a black couple celebrating their 15th anniversary, was seated at the window booth. The same one Maya had been quietly turned away from not long ago. But tonight, there were no theatrics, no hesitation, no pause to scan the room. A host smiled, pulled out the chair, and offered them water like it was the most natural thing in the world, because it was. Travis, now in a charcoal apron and crisp shirt, approached with confidence that wasn't polished, it was earned. He carried a small cast-iron skillet lined with fresh cornbread, the citrus zest catching the light like a secret. He placed it on the table, smiled, not for a tip, not for approval, but because it felt right. "Welcome," he said, simply. In the kitchen, Maya hovered over the stove, a ladle in her hand and a dish towel slung over her shoulder. She stirred a pan sauce until it glistened, then tasted it, eyes closed. The flavors bloomed: smoke, acid, depth, and with them came memory. The view from a bus window as a child, the weight of her grandmother's hand on her shoulder, the scent of dish soap from old kitchens where her family worked so others could dine. She thought of spreadsheets and pitch decks, of late nights converting recipes into cost margins, of every step between rage and resilience, of how long it took to believe that she didn't just deserve a place at the table, she could own the whole building. At the pass, the ticket came back from the anniversary table. A note had been written at the bottom of the check. "Best night we've had in years. Thank you for making space." Maya folded it once, carefully, and slipped it into her apron pocket. Not for a photo, not for a post, just for herself. Like a receipt for a debt finally repaid. Later that evening, just as service was winding down and the last guests sipped their wine by the windows, the front door opened one more time. Richard Huxley stepped inside. He didn't wear his old tailored blazer or signature pocket square. He wore a plain coat, no tie, and an expression caught somewhere between humility and curiosity. He waited to be acknowledged, not out of arrogance, but out of respect, for whose space this now was. Maya saw him, gave a small nod. He asked for a seat near the kitchen. When the server approached, he ordered the okra stew. It came in a wide ceramic bowl, steam curling upward, golden oil pooling at the edges, thyme laid gently on top like a ribbon. He took one bite, paused, blinked, then looked up. "We should have cooked this years ago," he said softly. Not quite to her, not quite to himself. Maya stepped out from the line, wiped her hands, and met his eyes. "We should have," she agreed. She didn't need his praise, she didn't need his guilt. But in that moment, his words didn't feel like approval. They felt like a weather report. A small confirmation. The climate had shifted. Outside, the rain had returned. Not the stormy kind, just a gentle mist, painting the sidewalk and glinting under street lamps like silver threads. The kind of rain that softens things, the kind that waters roots. Inside, a room once trained to exclude was learning something new. Servers moved with more awareness, guests lingered longer, conversations flowed across tables between people who wouldn't have crossed paths before. In one corner, a young server, new to the job, asked Travis quietly, "What's different now?" He didn't answer right away. He watched Maya moving through the room, checking plates, offering nods, placing a hand on a guest's shoulder in quiet thanks. Then he said, almost under his breath, "Everything that should have been, already." Near closing, when the last slice of pecan tart was served and the trio packed up their instruments, Maya finally did something she hadn't allowed herself to do all night. She sat at the window booth. No reservation, no hesitation, just space that was now hers, always had been, in a way. She leaned back, the weight of the evening gently settling over her shoulders. Not heavy, not burdensome, just real. The satisfaction she felt wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause. It came with the quiet knowledge that the room no longer needed to change to make space for her. The room was hers to shape. And that was enough.